Hi, everybody. Hi, Dolores. And hi, Lana. Hey, Rob. And Susan. Hello from Massachusetts and from Minneapolis. Hello from the M's. Well, hello from Ashburn, Virginia. Now, Rob says it's pretty obvious why Obama wants Bernie to fail. Obama. And Dolores says because he's a putz. Thank you, Devora, for that piece of wisdom. Greg is joined. Hiya, Greg. Cheyenne and Nancy Blackmar. Hi, Nancy. And Dolores Pierce and Bonnie. Hi, honey. And Robin Halsey. Hi, Robin. Nice to see you. And Gregory says evening from the backwoods of southern rural Georgia, where the real populists still live. The tradition of left populism. Cheyenne says Obama. And Russ Coleman has joined. Hi, Russ. Great to see you. Says I can hang out for a little bit. Good evening. Okay. Okay, so Bonnie and I were talking early today, and of course, she came across what's been circulating over the last, 3, 4, 5 days now, which of course was the comment by our former president saying that he didn't think the party should go too far to the left, or actually further left than the country was, and he still thought that the country was basically wanted to change a few things, to improve a few things, but that they didn't want to tear the system down. Okay, and this comment was made to a group of high rollers in private, okay, in New York. I guess it wasn't so private, however, that that piece of the tape didn't actually come out. Uh, and so it has attracted a lot of attention. And of course, we have all kinds of theories about why he did this. And Greg said Obama wants Bernie to fail because he wants his corporate masters to continue raking in the dough. Well, that's a good reason. And John Michael Williams has joined. Hi, John Michael. Really nice to see you. Are you running again this year, by the way? And Cheyenne says and Barack is a crybaby. Rob says Obama really isn't on the left to begin with. He's a neoliberal, and Obama wants to be the standard bearer of what presidential achievements are. He wants everyone to forget FDR and Obama to be the replacement. He knows that Bernie will outshine him. Obama, there's more from Rob. Obama doesn't want to be the page that gets turned. A good way to put it. He doesn't want to have what he did while in office be questioned or compared as a failure, or shall I say seen. okay, and the one who, I'm not sure the one who, but anyway, and Robin Halsey says, well, Barack was sent out to curb real progressives, for example, Bernie, by his corporate handlers. Also, why the billionaires coming unglued and they're relying on their paid henchmen, Hillary, Obama, etc., to stop hashtag the Bernie Pure. And Greg offers right after that. I'm glad to say I never once voted for Obama. Well, I'm happy to hear that, Greg. And Rob said, protected his class. Doesn't want to be seen how corrupt he and his administration was. Too late. We know. And that's why he's now pontificating about how we need to lower our expectations and get with reality. Well, he can go fuck himself. And Margot Shepard joined. Obama was a terrible president, and if I were him, I'd be embarrassed too. Cheyenne says, do people know what he's up to in Chicago? I don't know. I'm not sure what he's up to in Chicago, but I'm pretty sure that he's making a lot of money. And that in the 3 years since he's been gone, is it 3 years now? It was January 2017, close to 3 years now. I'm sure he's been making money hand over fist, and that he's now worth at least $30 million and growing very, very fast. And Greg says, yeah, unfortunately, I voted for Mitt in 2012. And Robin said, I still want my 2 votes back. And Robin has joined. I think a lot of us have been disappointed by Obama. I certainly was, and Bonnie certainly was, okay, as well. And I think that you've already come up with a number, okay, very good reasons. Of course, the corporate masters have sent him out. They are paying him now. That's why he's getting so wealthy so quickly. They're paying big bucks for speeches and big bucks for him to whisper in their ears, smiling all the while. And, of course, he wants Bernie to fail so that he can continue to make the big bucks. So I think that's certainly one reason. Okay. I also think that he's a neoliberal, that there are ideological differences between he and Bernie, and those ideological differences are very, very important. And he doesn't like to see somebody going out there and not talking about fiscal responsibility all the time. He spent most of his presidency talking about fiscal responsibility. And most of his presidency, after the initial spurt, when he had to pull us out of a recession, he mostly excelled at cutting the deficit. So most of his presidency was spent in cutting the deficit and bringing it into line. And I think by the time he was through, he was roughly down to something like 3%, okay, of GDP, okay, in deficit, or maybe a little over 3% after starting out at roughly 10% from the situation he inherited in the Bush administration. So Cheyenne tells us that Robin indicated first, I'm disagreeing with all of the personal IDing, okay, of Obama. He's tactical in his work to keep a corporatist. Cheyenne says, He's taking valuable land needed for housing in Chicago and spending millions on his library. Oh, of course. Why didn't he go to California and do that? I thought everybody goes to California. No, I guess not. Cheyenne says people there are pissed. I'll bet they are. I'll bet they are. Dale Weaver has joined Hydale, and Cheyenne says, R.I.P. Obama. R.I.P. is the acronym for rest in peace, of course. Uh, I think we want that. I think we want him to leave us all alone. He's done enough damage. We don't need any more damage from him. The establishment Dems are just fine with Trump. Those tax breaks were great. The deregulation is great. We've got to take back this country from the one political party, the billionaires. And don't forget also the neoliberals of both parties, who themselves are really forming a political party. His economic illiteracy really pisses me off. We do not have a credit card with China or any other country since we are not pegged to another currency. Absolutely, Greg. That's something you learned at MMT school, of course, and it's absolutely correct. Uh, Robin says his illiteracy was intentional, in my opinion. He was duly advised by Stephanie Kelton and others on how much was needed for a true recovery, and he chose purposely not to. I don't think he was duly advised by Stephanie Kelton at that time, but actually, Christina Romer, okay, who was in the Economics Council at that time, actually recommended a stimulus bill that initially was in the $1.8 trillion or so range. And then Larry Summers, who was the chairperson, okay, of the council, he basically said, "I can never show Obama this. I mean, he's never going to take this into account. He has in mind something that would not go over $1 trillion. In other words, he had set kind of a target, okay, for the bill. So finally, they came in at an $800 billion stimulus bill, and Obama was pleased with that. And they made some compromises, I believe, with some of the conservatives, okay, as well. And they reoriented that bill so it would have a lower fiscal multiplier, but might be more politically acceptable. And Cheyenne said, I mean, RIP, rot in prison. Oh, I see. Wow. Never heard that one before. Okay. Rot in prison, good enough. Rob says, I don't even know what kind of legacy Obama's even trying to protect. What is trying to protect his legacy by saying to the U.S. and the world that matter that you know what Bush took us to 2 wars by matching and tasing it to 5 bombing campaigns and overthrowing the government, okay, in Libya, and taking a stab at Syria for good measure. No, that wasn't enough. Let me make sure the Bush tax cuts are permanent. Forget the renewals, the bails, the banks, or the people. The job creators, the knowledge class, the upper class didn't mean to do what happened. Sorry. Oh, the upper class didn't mean to do harm. They didn't know this was going to happen since they're the engine of innovation. Let's take them plus they're his friends, unquote. I think I understand what you're trying to say, Rob. Thank you. Alex Glaros. Hey, Alex. Long time no see. Long time no see. My friend Alex has arrived. And Greg Mallard says he seriously needs to learn on macroeconomic reality and what Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution says. No, he knows very well what it says. He just doesn't believe what it says. And Robin Halsey said, okay, I got the person wrong, but the amount was ignored. It was. It was certainly ignored. There were some people in the Economics Council who were talking in the neighborhood of $2 trillion. Okay. But Christine Romer finally went down to the 1.8. When it was rejected out of hand by Summers, she should have resigned and gone back to Berkeley. I think she was at Berkeley, if I recall correctly, right then and there. Shouldn't have wasted any more time in Washington. Everything else was a waste. It would have been a great signal for her to send to everybody concerned. Anyway, Russ says the good news is that the great financial crash in Obama laid the foundation to begin tearing down, exposing neoliberalism. That's the good news, but it's not very good news because it has taken an awful long time, and we still haven't managed to tear it down. It's weakened, but we have not managed to tear it down. And Robin Halsey says, I get so damned angry about all his usefulness trying to reach across the aisle when he just got bitch slapped over and over. He knew his biscuit was already buttered, and oh well, he had no business even running like Mayor Butt. In my opinion, of course, at the time I was in the dark about the Dems. But I think the light was starting to dawn even back then, Robin, wasn't it? And Rob said, let's not even get into Mitt Romney care from state level to bring it up to the national baby, with the president of forcing us to purchase garbage for profit insurance if you don't get ready to pay that individual mandate tax. Now that's setting a precedent. Yeah, it's all true, Rob. And in fact, what actually happened is we were on the cusp. The country was ready for it. All the polls showed it, of passing a Medicare for All bill early in 2009. But Obama took it off the table, used the public option trick, sparkle pony, to divert and distract people from the progressive side. Then also reneged on the public option, uh, and spent a year and 3 months, essentially dickering with people who never had any intention of voting for a healthcare reform bill. Finally passed the piece of crap that was the ACA, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as the PPACA. And Bennett Robin has joined, and Cheyenne says, Obama still busy being a con artist. Yes, he certainly was a very big one of those. So, what they did is they basically wasted 10 years of time when all of us could have been on H.R. 676, the Medicare for All bill that was current at that time. No copays, no deductibles, and no premiums, even back then. Also, dental care and psychiatry was included even back then. It wasn't as strongly written, okay, as the Jayapal bill is now, but it would have become effective completely in the first year. And I personally know that it would have saved me in healthcare insurance, copays, but deductibles, actually, our family, would have saved us $70,000 over the 10-year period. And it'll be more than that. It'll be $84,000 before we actually get something else passed. He delayed the passage of a Medicare for All bill. That's assuming we get one in 2000, okay, in 21, by at least 12 years. That's the kind of money it cost. It cost an older couple going into retirement. That's what it cost us. That's not to mention the lives it has cost, and the divorces, and the bankruptcies, and the foreclosures. So he could play his games, and so that he could ensure that he was making the big bucks when he got out of the presidency. And Bennett Robin has joined. And Robin says, agreed, the DNC and corruption by Hillary against Bernie Sanders fired me up. And I'll agree that GW actually, with the economic crash, left me no choice but to finally go to college. But to finally go to college at a very late age, I learned how to learn again. So that was a good thing, but I don't think you want to credit GW for that. I think it's to your credit that you went back. Jeff Ginter's joined. Hiya, Jeff. Nice to see you. And Lana Dell says, people like to make excuses for Obama not passing a Medicare for All type of bill. Tom Harkin of Iowa stated plainly they had the votes and they blew it. The article is still available. They did have the votes. They certainly had the votes because they could have passed it under reconciliation if they had wanted to pass H.R. 676 in that way. When Obama got into office, there were 58 senators who were members of the Democratic Party. Now, that was not enough to foreclose a filibuster, but as I said, a reconciliation bill would have would have actually prevented a filibuster, so it could have been passed under the reconciliation procedure. Obama could have gotten Harry Reid also to eliminate the filibuster on January 3rd of 2009, had he wanted to do so. Remember, we were losing jobs at 700,000 jobs per month at that time. Everybody was panicked, including Harry Reid. Harry Reid would not have dared to have a new president who had gotten a landslide. He wouldn't have dared to go against the president. He would have gotten rid of the filibuster, and then the Medicare for All bill should have been passed with a simple majority vote. Since there were 58 senators who were Democrats, didn't require a single Democratic vote. And the president had 8 votes to give away on the Democratic side and still pass H.R. 676. But I won't say the Democrats blew it, because it was deliberate. It was Obama who intentionally blew it. He and Max Baucus torpedoed it, and they played games with the public option after that. They wanted neither bill, nor did they want to pass anything quickly. Two things should have been done very, very quickly. First, a $2 trillion stimulus bill, followed by Medicare for All bill. That should have been done. These two things should have been done by the end of February. Right after that, there should have been a credit card bill reform passed. There was a CCR bill, okay, that was passed, but it was absolutely milquetoast bill. It allowed the banks to continue to get away with murder. It should have specified that the credit card rates would be no more than 5% over the prime rate at the time. The prime rate at that time was no more than 2%. It should have cut those rates down to that amount. It still would have been big profits for the banks. But they could have cut it that low at that time. Right after the CCR bill, they should have moved to a FinReg bill that would have cut off any possibility of another crash. Instead, they didn't pass the FinReg bill until October. And they left all kinds of gaps in it, which would allow more financial bubbles to be formed, which over a period of time is what has started to happen. And today, we are still vulnerable to another financial crash thanks to them. Thanks to them. We don't need the kind of advice that Obama, would give us. Also, after that FinReg bill had been passed by March, that April, there should have been significant legislation, a big bill taken up to address the climate crisis. I mean, everybody who was anybody knew what was going on then. Okay, maybe we didn't know that the crisis was as serious as it is now. But if we had acted on it in April of 2009 and passed an appropriate bill, we would be far down the road now to fixing the crisis. Obama blew that. He blew that because he blew all his credit on fighting for a minimal health care reform that still allowed many, many, many people to die. He used all his political capital on that. And by the spring of 2010, the Democrats had nothing to run on. His stimulus bill was inadequate to create a booming economy. It only created a slowly growing economy that was not benefiting most people. He couldn't run on the economy. Nobody could feel the benefits of the ACA bill because it didn't pass until March. And by the time of the election, almost none of it had kicked in for people to benefit from. But the taxes had already started. It's one of the stupidest political moves in the whole history of politics that was made by the Democrats. So this was all malpractice. And the Obama administration failed to notice. They failed to notice that the census was coming in 2010 and that there would be redistricting. and they made little or no effort to avoid their total defeat in the House elections of 2010. They could tell what was coming. They had nothing to run on. In fact, I wrote a blog post. Okay, I forget if it was in February or March. Okay, of 2009. Its title was "They Have Nothing to Run On," or maybe "What Are They Going to Run On?" Something like that. Okay, they had nothing to run on. You could see it coming. You could see it coming. I mean, the Tea Party was there by the summer of 2009. It was already there. It was already a force to be reckoned with at town hall meetings in the summer of 2009. It was obvious they were going to be a force in the elections of 2010. And Obama didn't care. All he cared about in early 2010 was starting to get a fiscal responsibility commission going, a fiscal commission. It was awful. But I'm not going to go through all of that. What I want to do is answer the question. Why does President Obama want Bernie Sanders to fail? Well, we've all provided some reasons. But for me, I think by far the biggest reason is the legacy reason. Of course, the money flows into this also because, of course, if he's still the legacy president that so many people look back upon so fondly, he can keep on bringing in the big bucks, right? So the big bucks comes into here too. But just as a matter of pride, and reputation, and being able to do this, that means a lot to Obama personally. He always acted like that. He always kind of strutted around when he was the president. If you recall, I think he learned that from Bill Clinton. Maybe he learned that from somebody else. I don't know. But he was quite a jaunty walker, quite a strutter, when he was the president of the United States. Rob says, I get so pissed off when I talk about Obama. It's all because of how well he lied to me in the country. Yeah, I get real pissed off about it too. It's always interesting when Democrats are always smugly saying we can't go too far left, yet never hear any of them saying we can't go too far right. Somehow that's okay and never dangerous. Oh, you're right on the money again, Rob. You're right on the money. But let me get back to the legacy point, because I think that Rob's legacy point is the most important reason why Obama is sticking his nose in where it doesn't really belong. And that is, all you have to do is look at what Bernie is proposing and look at the movement that Bernie is now building. And by the way, Bernie is now approaching, as I understand it, from the Hills crystal ball, he's now approaching $4 million in individual donations. Not $4 million, 4 million separate individual donations. That is absolutely amazing and speaks to the movement that he is building. Now, Obama had a great movement going also, but what did Obama do? Obama disbanded his movement when he was elected president. He quieted everybody. He didn't feed the movement at all. He didn't want the movement to interfere with how he was going to do bipartisan stuff. But Bernie has told us the job only starts when he gets elected. After that, he's going to work with his movement to change the atmosphere, the whole climate in Congress, the whole climate in politics. And when you think of the movement he's trying to build, and then you go to his website, and here we go to Bernie Sanders on the issues. And we just review what he's proposing, okay, and what he intends to do. The 21st century economic Bill of Rights. What happened to my issues list? I didn't mean to. Here we go. All I really wanted was the list of issues to hit the high spots. Okay, of course, a welcoming and safe America for all, the Medicare for All bill, the Green New Deal program, free college, workplace democracy, housing for all, okay, a public option for housing. And of course, the Economic Bill of Rights for the 21st century, expanding Social Security, honoring our commitment to veterans, justice and safety for all, the program to eliminate medical debts of people, reinvesting in public education, fair banking for all, taxes on extreme wealth, the racial justice, free and fair elections, revitalizing the rural areas of America, income inequality tax plan, responsible foreign policy, women's rights, disability rights, getting corporate money out of politics, LGBTQ plus equality, empowering empowering empowering. I'll get it eventually, folks. Anyway, tax increases for the rich. You know what I'm trying to say. Gun safety, how legalizing marijuana, empowering tribal nations, real Wall Street reform, jobs for all, fair trade, corporate accountability, and democracy. You know that Bernie is serious about all of these areas. He's given us the outline for bills already in many of these areas. He's been very clear and detailed about all his proposals. Going all through this, many areas here, Obama never even said he intended to touch. And of course, he touched only a few of the areas. Only a few of the areas. If Bernie is successful And if he gets a landslide election, as is very possible, once he is the nominee of the Democratic Party and he starts campaigning all over the country in all 50 states, the sky's the limit, because Trump is not going to be able to compete with this particular agenda. And since Bernie's brand is authenticity, people, though they're not going to know that he may be successful in getting all of this through, they will know that he intends to fight for every item on here. Every item on here. And they will know, because it's easy to recognize, that if he even accomplishes half of this, even half of this, he will be the most important president which the United States has had since the end of the Second World War and the death, okay, of FDR. So of course, Obama doesn't want to see that kind of thing actually happen. He knows that if it does happen, he will not only be gone, but he will be absolutely forgotten. Not only that, his failures will be placed in high relief. In high relief. All the claims that he made as to why he could not accomplish this, why he could not accomplish that, all of them will have been shown by Sanders to have been lies. His failures will finally be seen as failures. The opportunities he had when he came in will be seen as opportunities lost because of his ideology, because he was a neoliberal, and because he would not fight for the people, but was only interested in protecting Wall Street from the pitchforks. In contrast, what Bernie tells us is he's not going to protect them from the pitchforks. In fact, he's going to ally himself with us and our pitchforks. Sam Hollenbeck has joined. Cheyenne says, I know, Rob, I worked myself to exhaustion trying to get Obama elected the first time. I spearheaded the primary in my district, betrayer in chief. And Lana said, that's hideous. Greg says, Obama caused his own party to lose a supermajority in both the House, the Senate, governorships, and over 1K state legislature seats. Yes, his presidency is what led to Trump. And Robin says, Dr. Joe, what happened in 87 when we lost our personal credit card and installment loan interest deductions in our federal taxes? Who did that to us? It was a combination of fiscally responsible Democrats and also Republicans. It was a bipartisan deal, helped along by certain senators who are very friendly to to finance capitalism. They wanted to have more of our taxes to offset the deficits and to persuade the Federal Reserve to keep interest rates low. What you have to remember is that interest rates in Reagan's time were very high. Even when Volcker began to bring down the interest rates in 1983, in time for the election, of 1984, they were only brought down into the neighborhood of somewhat like 5%. When Bill Clinton first got into office, the prime rates were at 5%. I'm not sure what the overnight rates were then, because I was following the prime rates more than the overnight rates. But they were probably within a point or two. They were nowhere near close to what they became during the Obama administration. The interest rates we remember for the last 10 years are interest rates that varied. Overnight interest rates were varying somewhere between very close to 0 and 2%. But in those days, they were varying between something like maybe 4 and 6%. Something like that. So, that was only facilitated by the fact that people were losing their consumer deductions. There were even suggestions, of course, that the mortgage deductions also should be gone, but they never got around to passing that. There was too much opposition. Too many people relied on their end-of-year deductions for mortgages. Lana said, I think it was Reagan. It wasn't only Reagan, Lana. The fiscal responsibility Democrats cooperated completely with him on that. It was bipartisan BS that was going on. And Cheyenne says, Republican no, Democrat no, pissed yes. Devore says, and Clinton didn't help either by taking money from the state parties for her own campaign either. No, she ran all the money through into her own coffers. That's why she had such a big funding advantage in the campaign over Trump. Didn't help her. And Cheyenne said, exactly, the legacy. Gotta go, Joe. Love to all. And Rob said, deregulation, check. Derivatives, check. Financial speculation, check. Allow banks a leverage ratio of 100 to 1, check. Also, bad CTDs and derivatives to be insured by multiple institutions. Nobody knows how. Many insured these financial products. Check. Let Citibank tell Obama, allow him to choose from to appoint the positions in Obama's administration. Check. Absolutely, that's exactly what happens. What happened was that they gave a list of people to John Podesta and Rahm Emanuel, and they put in the people that were acceptable to Citigroup and the other bankers. Steve says Obama betrayed us. Let's just face it, Obama didn't have the courage to betray his class. He didn't have the courage, to betray his class. That's true, but it wasn't even a matter of courage. He didn't want to. He wanted to follow the Clinton path and make the big bucks when he got out. He cared primarily about his family. He never cared for us. What he did was to ensure that his family would become a part of the new aristocracy of the creators, the aristocracy of talent, and that he and his family would join that upper class. And that, of course, is what's happening. He was a very successful president from that particular standpoint. Steve says Bernie will break up the big banks and the military-industrial complex. That is huge. It is. Okay, it is huge. But we have to keep in mind that he'll probably go after the big banks first. And he's probably going to go after many other things first. He won't get to the military industrial complex for quite some time. And I think the reason why is because if he's going to move to break up the military industrial complex, he needs a tremendous amount of pure political credit. People have to have such trust in him that they'll accept the closing down of many of the bases in their areas and the shutting down of the military Keynesianism. So Bernie will have to have already alternative programs that have been implemented to shift people away from military Keynesianism to a Green New Deal. So the Green New Deal is going to have to come first before the breakup of the military-industrial complex. I'm not saying there are not going to be reductions in the military budget. There will be reductions in the military budget. I'm sure he'll start working on that fairly soon. But he's not going to break up the MIC. It's going to continue to exist for a long time until people are ready to recognize that Bernie is the greatest president they have had in living memory. That's going to have to happen first. Steve says, I'm on fire tonight. Yes, I am on fire tonight. I've got something to be on fire about. And Lana says, circa 1987, the mortgage rates were about 8 or 9%. And the mortgage rates were. But remember, the mortgage rates were pegged to the LIBOR. Okay, the mortgage rates had fallen because the LIBOR had changed. But the overnight rates, I'm saying, were at 5 or 6%. We can easily check approximately where they were by going back to CBO reports and seeing what the cost of bonds was then as a percent, of GDP. Because that reflects what the federal funds rates were at that time. Russ says froze. Okay, Lynn Marie Slivka's joined. Hi, Lynn Marie. Russ says, got a call tonight. I've got a second heavy week in a row, typical of the holiday season. See you again soon. Thanks for coming, Russ. Russ says, froze. Hope it didn't freeze for too long. Robin says, didn't the DNC recently say they're not funding down ticket Dems in red states any longer? Probably. I don't know how far down ticket they're talking about. And Robin says, I'm fairly sure they're leaving us in a big lurch, trying to get people who are progressive in office in places like North Carolina. But on the other hand, Robin, if they were funding people who were progressive, who were running for the Congress down there, well, if they were supporting candidates who were running for Congress down there, they would not be progressive candidates. So paradoxically, if they've decided not to fund congressional candidates in some of the deep red states, it might be possible for a progressive to sneak into office down there. A crowd-funded progressive, a populist progressive, might be able to sneak in. So Robin says, North Carolina has entire regions totally dependent on the military. I can't imagine what would happen here. The whole state, minus two hubs, Raleigh and Charlotte, exclusive of jobs, income, infrastructure. The rest of us are screwed. But not if the new green industries are brought to the region first. Not if those industries are growing. Not if the federal job guarantee at a living wage is in place. Not if all of the other programs he wants to implement also go into place. Nobody will be screwed then. Rob says, one thing I do worry about is the upper class, in conjunction with the military-industrial complex, engage in a coup to overthrow Bernie, much like in the same way they tried to overthrow FDR, and also, I might add, Rob, in just the same way they tried to overthrow the popular presidents in Latin America. It's not out of their own possibility, especially what happened in Bolivia. Right. Corporations like Tesla stocks went up because of the coup, because they now have secured the lithium ion reserves, or they think they have. They now have secured them. They may not have secured them because resistance is still going on there, and the majority of the population, after all, is indigenous. And if they keep the resistance going, which they're in a good position to do, we could see a protracted insurgency in that country, preventing the large companies from exploiting the reserves in the way they want to. But anyway, that's still to be determined. But, okay, to go back to the main point, the real reason why I think that Obama is intervening now, and the most important reason why he would want to intervene, is he desperately doesn't want to see a near successor of his run on and be successful in handling the issues that he ran on and was unsuccessful in dealing with. He doesn't want to see that. He doesn't want to see that. That is so important to any president's calculations, that he be well thought of, especially someone as obviously egotistical as Obama is. I mean, Bernie says, not me, us, not me, us, not me, us. But once Obama got to be president, he never said anything like that. He never said anything like that. All he did was make sure that for 8 years he looked good. He looked good. Anyway, going on. Thank you for all the comments. I love the comments. Steve says Bernie should put Dr. Joe in his cabinet. And Gravel. Yeah, Mike and I would have a great time. And Cheyenne Tierra says one more thing: Obama deported over 3 million law-abiding immigrants and asylum seekers. Let that sink in. I know. I have let it sink. I have let that sink in. I know what it meant to those people. I know what it meant to them. I know the suffering in the community that resulted from that. I know that was only one of the many terrible things that he did. But his Affordable Care Act alone caused 356,000 unnecessary fatalities because he refused to pass H.R. 676. Fatalities, 356,000. Steve says, Jimmy Dore said that the Green New Deal will kill the petrodollar, causing worldwide depression. Thoughts? I don't think Jimmy knows what the petrodollar is. What the petrodollar is only the U.S. dollars used to buy oil with, most especially Saudi oil with, because the Saudis made a deal with the U.S. that in return for us keeping on good terms and supporting the regime, what they would do is see to it that people who bought oil from them would have to buy it using U.S. dollars. But that's all they are. It's easy for the people who want to buy that oil to get to the U.S. dollars. All they have to do is trade for the currency in the international market. I mean, they can currency trade for the dollars. What the petrodollar does is it keeps the value of the dollar up. But that hurts our exports and costs us jobs. That's not a good thing for regular people. It's not a good thing for regular people. If the exchange rate on the dollar goes down, okay, and not up, that's not going to cause a depression all over the world. I don't see why it would. It might actually help a lot of countries. I don't know why Jimmy thinks that it's going to cause a depression. I don't think there's any basis for that. In fact, I frankly think that Jimmy doesn't know what the petrodollar is. If he did, I don't think he'd say that. Robin asks of Rob Rivera, do you know about the UN and the minerals to make batteries in the South Pacific, and U.S. Congress won't sign on to get our share of the franchised areas to mine? It's far more materials than found on land. China leads with leases, Japan and others. So isn't it the situation a possible national security issue? I saw on 60 Minutes the other night. Okay, I don't know about this issue, Robin. I'm not ready to comment on it. I generally don't watch 60 Minutes because most of the time 60 Minutes is simply BS these days. So, if they had a good one, I'll certainly be interested in catching it somehow. Robin says, I don't think Jimmy Carter cared so much, okay, about his legacy. He still is making one. Yes, I mean, I think Jimmy Carter was a pretty humble man. I'm taking everything into account. He was a very modest man. And Gerald Ford was also. They both were extremely modest. Uh, okay. Jimmy Carter has worked hard for his legacy in his post presidential period. And he probably holds the informal title of the best president after he got out of the White House ever. The most charitable president who did the most for people. If he had only been a little less fiscally responsible, he might have turned into a great president. His motivations were good. He just was really duped by the fiscal responsibility mavens. Rob said, yeah, Obama said, but thank you to the grassroots. Quote, I'll take it from here, unquote. Yeah, that's what he said. He deactivated us. Rob said to Robin, no, I don't know about that. And Steve said, God bless Jimmy Carter, bad president, great human being. And Robin said, Jimmy is crazy over the Trump attacks. Not that he's a fan. He's so disgusted with the Dems. I agree he needs to learn MMT, and I've not heard him talk about this issue. He's had Stephanie on. I mean, I don't know why he just doesn't have her on again and ask her about the petrodollar. Okay, and let her educate him. She can do it in a few short paragraphs. Rob says Jimmy Dore is great in some things, just a complete idiot on others, especially economics. He has no idea. And Susan Eldridge said to Margot Shepard, Jimmy Dore had Stephanie Kelton on his show. He did. And Robin says it's a huge issue. It is. Well, I guess I stimulated quite a conversation tonight. Hi, Jimmy Sunderland. And Susan Eldridge says Jimmy Dore, it's a huge issue. And Rob says Jimmy has some fetish with the petrodollar. He's so ignorant of the petrodollar, he's also linking it to the reason why we're in the Middle East. Yeah, we're not in the Middle East for the petrodollar. We're in the Middle East because we still want to control oil. We should be shutting down the freaking oil. Steve says, Susan Eldridge, yeah, he wants to learn. And Margot says, yes, he did. Too bad he didn't absorb more. Perhaps he'll have her on again. And Robin says, I've missed this obsession with him, of course. I was out of all loops for about 8 months when my husband died. I'm sorry to hear that, Robin. Robin says, Robin's got the link. Thank you, Robin. Why the U.S. is missing out on the race to mine trillions of dollars worth of materials from the ocean floor. I'm sorry, did I say millions? I should have said trillions. Okay, I think I'm finally caught up to your comments. So, Thank you for such a lively discussion. Really enjoyed that. Uh, if you have any more comments, then I'll wait and see if any more come in. In the meantime, I will show my Patreon screen. Also, please share, like, and subscribe when I get the video up to on YouTube, which will be within a half hour after we close. And please become a patron at www.patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. Please, people, I need some patrons. Every little bit helps, but I need to see the number of patrons starting to grow here. Thank you. And let me check in and see if we've got any more comments. Steve says, thank you, sir. Susan says, Jordan Chariton of Status Quo has been mentioning MMT a lot on his show. Yeah, I noticed that, Susan. Jordan seems to have bought off on MMT now. I mean, he believes what we're saying. I don't know how well he understands it yet, but he had Steve on his show at one point. Steve did a good job of explaining things to him. And Alana says she invited him to the conference. But did he get there, Lana? I guess I knew you invited him to the conference. Did he ever get there? Robin says, I'll send dollars as soon as I get my Social Security disability. I'm living on zero income. Wow. Thank you, Robin. And I'm about out of my husband's equipment to sell, but I'm working on it. Thank you, Robin. So your husband was a musician. Oh, that must have been terrible for you. Susan Eldridge says, but he keeps saying we print money. Yeah, I know. He needs to have somebody come on and say, hey, Jordan, that's a pejorative. We don't use the term we print money because really we don't print money anymore for the most part. We mark up spreadsheets. We don't print money. We mark up accounts. We use spreadsheets to mark up accounts. So Lana says, no, he did not get there. Which conference? The MMT conference back in September. Steve says, Pete had an embarrassing video surface of him supporting the Tea Party. Oh, when did he have that surface? That's important. I hope they can get that video into Iowa. Because while I think the polls are overestimating his popularity in Iowa, his big ad buy seems to have made an impression there, and he certainly is trending up in the polls. So Steve says today is when it surfaced. Well, let's hope it's a valid video and not something some people tampered with and created. Anything else? Any other random comments? Or any other non-random? They're actually non-random comments. I'm sorry. Mayor Pete. Now, Mayor Pete, evidently, there's a video out showing that that Mayor Pete made some supporting comments regarding the Green Party. And my brother Hal has joined. Hey, Hal, how you doing? And Susan said, "Did you see the new Politico article about the big money donors?" Yes, Susan, I did read it. But thank you for sending it to me. And I thought it was really very revealing. What it seems to be revealing is something which is becoming increasingly apparent over a period of time. And that is, when it comes to politics, what Elizabeth Warren wants is to have her cake, okay, and eat it too. She wants to appear as a populist whose faith, okay, is in the people. And she wants to appear as a person who is working for the people. But she wants to be friendly enough to the big donors in order to get them to contribute very large dollars to her and her campaign in direct ways. So one of the financial chairs of her campaign is doing fundraising for her using cutouts of her. She never goes to the fundraisers to talk to the people, but to have a cutout of her on stage, and they talk to the people on her behalf, and they're raising big dollars. Now, where those dollars are going to go, okay, I don't know. She may be true to her campaign promises in the sense that they're not going to go to her campaign, but what she may be using them for is to create a fund which, if she's nominated, can be used for the DNC and can be used in other ways to support the party so that the party will support her. While, of course, she will claim to be completely clean of the large donors because she supposedly renounced them. So that's what is going on there as well. Robin says she'll never get my support. Oh my God. Well, it's not simply this. Okay, it's the whole pattern of things. It's the way she came out strongly, okay, for Medicare for All, and she defended it strongly, but during the debates, and sometimes very effectively, while all along she was planning something like a transition period in which a Medicare for All bill was not immediately passed, but then basically proposing that we legislate a public option and then rely on public opinion to continue to demand Medicare for all. Of course, that would stretch the fighting over Medicare for all certainly over a 3-year period once she got into office, creating a situation where there would not be much campaign space and space for legislation on some of the other major issues we have to face. Why did she do that? It was most probably because she put the politics of everything first and put what the legislative priorities are on the back burner, satisfied that as long as she could sound good and that she could credibly still claim that she was for Medicare for all, that she could keep the people in her support base that are progressives still in that particular support base. But of course, as soon as her way of paying for it came out, and then followed by her latest transition plan, which makes no political sense at all, as I said a few streams ago, uh, people quickly caught on to that, and within a few days, they're now pointing out how much difference there is between she, and Bernie. Also, the Bolivian coup and Bernie's strong stand in relation to the Bolivian coup and his quick statements on that, compared to her own simply dithering around and never saying anything about it. That highlights the very big foreign policy differences that the two have. It's perfectly clear now that Warren is much more similar to Obama than she is to Bernie Sanders. She cannot really be trusted to legislate a comprehensive progressive agenda. She's underlining, she's making it clear, she's making it easy for us to campaign on the idea that she is not the person who can be trusted to implement a progressive agenda. Susan makes the point that at one time, Warren was a corporate lawyer. Yes, she started out that way, as a corporate lawyer. So, I'm being told by people that I'm frozen. What's causing the freezing is that for some reason the stream tonight is taking a lot of CPU. It seems to be taking a lot away from CPU, and memory, more than it usually takes away. There's not very much I can do about that, I'm afraid. So, if you'll bear with me, we can continue talking. Yeah, well, you can also go to Patreon for that. In other words, when you go to Patreon, all you have to do is sign up, to make a donation, and then when the donation is made, just to cancel it. Okay, so there are a number of ways of using that interface to actually send a donation. Okay, that's a one-time donation. Okay, the other way is I could simply send you my address. You can send a check. Okay, I have others who prefer to operate in that way. That works just fine. Susan says it makes sense now why she was so ambiguous in her messaging in Medicare for All. Well, I think that she desperately wanted to be able to distinguish herself from Bernie when it came to Medicare for All. At first, she was satisfied with saying that there was no difference between she, and Bernie. But over time, she became convinced that that was a position that had some disadvantages. So she wanted to still be able to say that she was for Medicare for All, but that she wasn't the same, as Bernie. She wanted to try to say, well, I'm for the Bernie bill, but my strategy for funding it and for getting it done in a political way is different. That's why I think she started talking about a Medicare for All framework rather than either of the two Medicare for All bills. Now, personally, if I were looking for a way to distinguish myself from Bernie and I were senator, then what I would do is say that I was for the House bill, H.R. 1384. And I would have said, yeah, I kind of love Bernie's bill, but really the House bill is a better bill. And here's why. That would have given her some good talking points in order to differentiate her from Bernie. But of course, she wanted to move to the right on this and not move to the left. And that was a problem. Okay, thank you, Steve. Margot says I'm not frozen for her. Okay, well, I think I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you very much for coming again. I think we had a wonderful discussion tonight. It was very, very active. And I love these discussions, so I'm really so glad that we had this. So thank you for coming. And I'll be on again but tomorrow night. If I have any more to say about the discovery that that Warren has some big donor private money still coming in, then I will say it if I have a further point, that I want to make on that. But I think, it's another dodge. It's another having your cake, and eating it as well. I think the truth is that Warren, is not a progressive. Now, does anybody know if Tulsi's single payer plus bill is out yet? I'd very much like to get a look at that. Robin says, just stop apologizing for actually being a progressive, please. Why are these politicians so fearful? Big, bold, which is what the people want. Real change. I think they do. I think they want real change all over the country. I think what Bernie has to do better in making the case is he has to have some examples related to typical people in different demographic groups and in different economic conditions. For example, I mentioned earlier that we as a couple in the last 10 years had spent $70,000 that we would not have had to spend had a Medicare for All bill been passed early in 2009. So, and basically, by not passing the Medicare for All bill at that time, Obama cost us $70,000. I'm pretty angry at him just for that. But I'm furious with him for leaving those 356,000 lives on the table. Where does that figure come from? I'll give you the link in just a minute. Won't take me but a minute. I'm still on. I'm still on. I'm looking for a particular figure. Right. I recalled correctly. It comes from my own estimate, which comes from a blog post on my site, and I'm leaving you the link in there. But I estimated the fatalities from 2010 through 2016, and they were 356,000. And if you want to see the basis on which I made that estimate, uh, it's in the blog post. Sign up for Bernie Debate Watch Party at berniesanders.com. Steve says good night, and he says a wonderful show. I share it widely. Well, thank you, Steve. And thank Bonnie for getting me onto this topic. Susan says, sign up for Bernie Debate, the watch party at berniesanders.com. Steve says, very few shows go so far in depth, hence the name. Steve says, but Nico House did a show on Tulsi's Medicare for All program recently. Yes, I saw that show, Steve, but I also think I want to see. I want to see it in writing so I can evaluate it for myself. I know Nico is in close contact with the campaign. That is true. And Steve says, yes, people are dying as we speak. Yeah, they've continued to die. In fact, in my article, I supplied some estimates about what the likely deaths would be between 2017 and 2024 if Trump were to stay as president. And the estimate I came up with is 467,419. I made certain assumptions about how he would cut into the ACA over a period of time. The situation may already be even worse than I was estimating here, but I estimated 2017 there were 39.7 thousand fatalities due to lack of insurance. In 2018, 52.45 thousand. In 2019, 55,000. And by 2020, I estimated there would be 61.5 thousand fatalities due to people not having health insurance, even if the Affordable Care Act stayed in effect. Uh, I also point out in this article that for the Trump years, the projected additional deaths compared to Medicare for All with no co-pays, okay, and no deductibles would be 460,419, which, by the way, is a number larger than the number of American military deaths in World War II, which was only 405,000. So, anyway, I keep saying, okay, I'm going to say goodnight. Now, I got everywhere with a quote, how do we sign up to be delegates? Inquiry. Sorry, Lana, I haven't. It varies from state to state. Okay, I know that. So I know the rules for Minnesota are going to be different. The rules for each state party, okay, are different. And I don't know what the rules are here in Virginia. I should begin to research that. Thank you for reminding me again. Steve says the Affordable Care Act sucks. Okay, it's not affordable. Darlene Chubb, okay, has joined. Okay, folks, I got to go. So I'm going to say goodnight now, and I'll see you tomorrow. And thanks for a great discussion tonight.